Yesterday I was by my local Harbor Freight store, so I decided to stop in there and buy a one of their numbers 60543 1x30 belt sanders, and I thought I'd do a little video about opening it and my first impressions. As you can see, the box is pretty well banged up, as most Harbor Freight boxes are. But once you cut it open, the packing inside is really very sturdy and protects everything. Okay, there was a instruction manual in there. Then laying on top, there was another L-shaped handle and bolt for mounting the table. And there was some really nice heavy foam packing on top of it to keep it from bouncing around. And there was the table was in there, and we'll get into that later. That was far from perfect, and the last part was the base of the unit and the motor, which was packed very well too. And as you can see, it made it from China with basically zero damage to the unit. It made it and stayed in good shape with no rust or damage. It seems to be very well made, and everything on it has a real good finish. To cover the motor over with, they put a plastic shield, I guess, to prevent grinding dust from getting into it. And there's a nice vacuum port on the removable cover side of it. So you just have to remove the top thumb screw to take that cover off, and then the cover is kind of a tight fit, but if you give it a yank, it'll come right off. And the frame of the unit is actually a really nice casting that's well done and well finished. And then there is a plastic wheel at the bottom that's the drive wheel. And about the only thing that I noticed on it was that back platen was really assembled pretty cockeyed on there, but that'll be easy to fix. And there was a problem with flatness in that one corner of the table where it's notched out. The rest of the table was fairly flat, but that corner fell off by about 1/8 of an inch. And all they had to do was a little bit of bending and banging on it, and I was able to get that reasonably flat like the rest of the table. Now, online I had read that the first thing you should do when you open it up is to check the set screw on the drive pulley. And sure enough, mine was loose, and turned it about 1/4 of a turn to snug it up, and everything was fine then. As with all Harbor Freight stuff, you will need a set of metric Allen wrenches, but I was able to square up the little platen pretty good just by loosening the screws, and there are some large slots there to allow you to move it around, and then just tighten them back up to hold it in position. After getting that lined up fairly well, the next thing to do was to install the table. It came with a bolt and kind of like a L-shaped handle that had a spring load on it so you could wind it back. And I found out that the first thing that you have to do is just take the washer off the bolt and put the head of the bolt in the cast pocket that'll lock it there, and then just put the table on, put the lock washer on, and then try to screw the handle on. I did run into some problems screwing the handle on because it's very limited the amount you can turn it before you have to push the spring and then turn it back again to get a little more cranking on it. But I finally wound up taking a little screw out of the end of it and the spring off of it, and then just taking the stud by itself and screwing it on. That made the job very easy. And once you get everything pretty much finger tight in there, then it's very easy to just put that L-shaped handle back on, put the handle on, and then the spring, and then screw it in from the outside and snug up the screw. And that makes the job go a lot easier trying to put that together. Then the next thing you want to do is set the level on the table and get it squared to the belt. And I found that in order to be able to get a square on the table of it, I had to loosen the screw on top and remove that little plastic shield that's on there, which only took a second to do. And then there was plenty of room to clear for a square. And I just kind of set the table fairly square by tightening that L-shaped handle. And then the next thing you have to do is there's a little set screw that goes down in the back and lands on the platen bracket. And you just adjust that until everything is square, till it hits the bracket and everything is squared up, so you can actually return the square later without having to use a square. Now the cover was a little bit tough to get back on. You have to line up the little tabs in the bottom with the base, and then you got to give it a really good push to get everything lined up. And then it turned out that the hole in the top was not quite perfectly aligned with the threaded part, so you had to fiddle with that a little bit to get everything tightened back down. So now it's time to try turning it on and see what it sounds like. Actually, I was quite surprised by the low level of noise that came out of it. It seemed to run really smooth, and it did not have much noise in it. I tried adjusting the tracking, but it seemed to be tracking pretty good the way it came. The only issue was that 1-inch wide platen was off center, so it looks like I may have to modify some holes in that. And I took a piece of scrap wood just to see how it worked and see if I could slow down the motor or stop it or anything, but it seemed to have plenty of power. There was zero bogging down no matter how hard I pushed, and it just kept on going. The only thing was there was like a thump, 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 thump when you're sanding. And what I did is I looked at the belt later, and belt is made with an overlap in it. I've never seen anything like that. So there was kind of like a big raised spot there. Most normal belts, as you can see, are taped flat together, and you don't get that problem. So it looks like with a couple of good belts to go along with it, I think this is a keeper. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.